So Dr. Ming Lee said he might be stopping by today. Just sort of wants to take a look at the class and see how things are going and what we're doing, and part of that quality assurance faculty review type of deal. And so I have on the docket for us today the primary thing that we're going to learn, which is new, is OAuth. And so we'll take a look at OAuth, and I have some cool working examples. So we have the GitHub example, and then we also have the Dropbox example. And then these examples in here, right, haven't been done yet. I'd never heard of VK, and I feel kind of out of it because it's got like how many people in here have heard of VK? It has like 100 million users, and it's a huge social networking site in Europe, and it looks like it's primarily Russia. And all I can say is like there's a totally different culture over there. Because I went over and I didn't log in and create an account, but I just sort of searched VK and then did image search, see what's this place look like. And there are some racy looking pictures that are allowed to be posted on VK. So if that's either interested you or not interested you, there's the information. Kind of funny. So I was thinking it'd be an interesting assignment for you all to fork this repo and then choose one of these and do the OAuth on it. And then once you've done the OAuth on it, submit a pull request back to me. That's how it works, right? You fork it, you change it, and then you submit a pull request to me. And if I like it, I pull it in. Is that the right way?
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Just checking.
Works.
I just work independently because I'm a teacher, so that's new to me too. And that's something I want to play with, is just to see how do we get I don't know, how do we do group work on using GitHub. So how's that sound as like a cool assignment?
I actually just got an email, I think, from Code Academy where they added a Git course.
I know, yeah.
I saw that.
Code Academy's received some funding. They've been bringing a lot of stuff online. I need to check that out. Limited time, man. And master of all versus what? Or jack of all versus master of one. So that's what we're going to learn today. We're going to learn OAuth, and then, but to get up to that, I thought, well, with the entire thing of authentication and sessions and how do we authenticate users, I thought it'd be nice to do a little bit of a review of all the different ways we could do it, right? And so here I've pulled out these things that say review. I've pulled out stuff we've already done. So how do we do App Engine, sort of authenticating somebody and then creating a session? How do we do manual authentication using a cookie, and just so like how do we, or do a session, right? And we saw that. And so we'll look at that. We'll look at Gorilla. We'll look at Memcache. And I broke bcrypt out, which Corey introduced us to. And it was also covered by Caleb after you found it, but later in the video series. So that's also in Caleb's videos, the summer boot camp videos. And so we'll take a look at bcrypt. I broke that out a little bit. It's pretty cool, just for encrypting passwords. And then we'll see the OAuth with GitHub, and if we have time, we'll look at how similar it is to Dropbox. And I got the Dropbox code from Daniel, so we'll have to make a few adjustments just to get it to work with my account and make sure we get the right credentials and numbers and everything like that. But that could be kind of instructive in and of itself. So that's what's on the docket. But first, I kind of just want to share, and the main takeaway from what I'm going to share is the importance of social networking. And I was not a fan of it for a long time, but the importance of that for your career. How many people like recognize like that's hugely important? I was always sort of like Twitter, mobile phones. It just looks like a pain in the ass, man. It just looks like it intrudes upon your life. Quite frankly, all of y'all look pretty addicted to your phones, right? That's the way I used to think. And I used to not have a phone. And then my ex-wife was like, I need to be able to contact you. I didn't have a phone, period, right? I was like, call my roommate, and my roommate could tell me to get in touch with you. Then my ex-wife was like, that's lame. So she bought me a phone and gave it to me. And it was just a flip phone. And then I didn't, again, have a phone for a long time. And then my current wife is like, we have kids, you should have a phone. All right, I'll get a phone. And I was going to teach Android programming, so I got a phone so I could do that. And now I feel addicted to my phone. I kid you not. Like I check it, like has anybody said anything on Twitter? What was the response? But it's also, so that's not so great. And like I tell my students not to text and drive, but then sometimes I'm like, well, there's no traffic coming. I'll punch the number in. That's not good, right? But the thing that I want to convey is the importance of social networking towards your career and just making yourself as visible as possible, right? Because that's only going to help you. And quite frankly, I'm kind of amazed at how it works, the interconnectedness of it. And so here some dude commented on one of my videos, right? Some guy named Glenn Lewis. And he's like, hey, here, that, you can make your code better if you do this. And so I was like, sweet, some dude totally wants to help me out. He watched the video and he said you can make your code better. And then I was like, all right, man, I fixed my code. Take a look. Does it look good? I don't know what LGTM means. What's that mean? Looks good to me, right? And so awesome. And then we ended up we started chatting. I don't know how, right? I'm like, I don't know who this guy is. Why are we chatting? Guess what? He runs App Engine at Google, and he's the guy in charge of Go on App Engine. And then we're totally chatting, and then he's like, oh, you're presenting at GDG Dev Fest this weekend at Google? And he's like, I'm totally going to come check you out. And he came down to GDG Dev Fest and sat in on my Google presentation, and afterwards we talked for 20 minutes and had a cup of tea, and he's just like, hey, what are you doing with Go? I just like to keep my finger on the pulse. I tell him what I'm doing, and I'm like, what are you doing with Go? And he tells me what he's doing. He's like, all right, man, I got to take off. My family's here. I walk out, I meet his family. And he came only to sort of see what I was doing with Go. I thought, that's amazing. The guy who runs Go on App Engine, right? Here he is commenting on my code. And then I'm just like, cool, I'll fix my code and see if it's good. And then we're having coffee, and he's like, he's the guy. I don't know. It blows me away. So how do you do that, right? Whatever you're into, just make videos, or post about it, and I don't know. But so I thought it was pretty great. And so along those lines, I got my course up and running, and so far I have 10 reviews, and so I'm going to give you all access. And so the access is you are my friend, and I'll show you that visually in 1 second. All right, and so if you're watching this video online, you just got free access too. But you are my friend, and that gets you into my course for free. And the only thing I ask for in exchange is give me a review if you like me. If you don't like me, just talk to me in person. We can see what we could, we could work out as a teacher. How can I improve myself? Give me that critical comment offline. But, help me sell this thing here. So if you like me, go give me a good review. That's all I ask in exchange. I already have 10 reviews, and some of them are from, Daniel left me a really nice review. And so and Daniel's like, I want to bullshit you, Todd. In his words, he said it. He didn't say bullshit. He's like, I want to say something I didn't mean. So thank you very much, Daniel. But then this woman, Lynn Langet, right? Lynn Langet is like, holy cow, are you kidding me? Lynn Langet just gave me a review. I had no idea who Lynn Langet was until this weekend I went to DevFest, right? This is the importance of going to conferences. And I get up there, and I'm driving up there in Chaba. Hey, Dr. Lee. Everybody, Dr. Lee, in case you aren't acquainted with him, he's going to come in and kind of take a look at what we've been learning all semester. So I wasn't familiar with who Lynn Langet was. I'm driving up to DevFest with Chaba, and Chaba was telling me, oh yeah, there's going to be this great person there who is a Google developer expert, and then she's also an MVP at Microsoft for Azure, and then she's also AWS, whatever the certification is that. She's got all 3 certifications. You definitely have to go listen to her talk. And so I went and I checked out her talk, and her talk was amazing, and I met her afterwards, and she does this thing, teach kids to program. And so I gave her access to my course, this course right here, so for free, so she could pass it on to all the kids who are learning to program. And so she came in and also gave me a really nice review. And she gave a cool presentation, which I want to show you about, which I think Daniel will be really interested in. And so her presentation was, so this is the website from GDG DevFest this weekend up at Silicon Valley. And it's just also more small world stuff I'll tell you about here in a second. So here's her presentation. So if you want to check out this presentation, getting over 4 million transactions per second with NoSQL on the Google Cloud with Aerospike. And so Aerospike is another NoSQL schemaless database you could work with. And here are the slides to her presentation. And so you can walk through all of her slides, and you could download her code so you could benchmark it and test it yourself. I seem to have lost bandwidth. But and then here on Developer Console, if you go into Google, into the Cloud Launcher, you have Aerospike right here. And so if you really needed some sort of a database which could handle, and when they tested this out at DevFest, because they have such amazing bandwidth at Google, over 5 million transactions per second. That's pretty amazing. So it's the fastest database in the world right now. And the guy who created it was also there, but it was like a surprise. He was just sitting in the audience to see how the audience reacted to it, and then afterwards he came up and spoke to everybody. So kind of a cool thing to check out. And aerospike is a constant, where that phrase comes from, it's a constant thrust behind a rocket, something like that. So, and so that was DevFest this weekend. And then the other small world thing was another one of the speakers at DevFest, this guy right here, who is a Google developer expert for Angular, right? Like I listened to his talk, and he was also really great. And I told you that Tesla contacted me to figure out who should they hire to help them learn Go. And they said we need a Go person, and we also need an Angular person. And so I'm in communication right now with Yuri after his talk. But after his talk, I thought, okay, I'm going to tweet this guy. And so I look him up, Yuri. And then how do I see my messages in here? Okay, here we go. I look him up, and it was like way back in June we'd already been talking because he'd been interested in Go. I'm like, whoa, I was already connected to him. I didn't even realize it. And he had all these questions about Go. So it's kind of like just a really small world thing. But that's kind of like me marveling at the importance of being socially networked and how that could help your career and introduce you to people. So that was Yuri and aerospike in these presentations. There we go, 1 million transactions per second, but we got 5 million. And so here's the presentation, and then all the code. You could get all the code from here and download that. So kind of a fun weekend checking all that stuff out. We're going to get to that in a second. So there's the new course. It's been launched. And then I just also want to share with you, because I was talking with you all about what's important, right? And school's important, and grades are important. But grades are important because they help you get a job. And ultimately, one of the most important things is, can you make rent? And so on Udemy, my course right now has 413 students, and it's made $2,700. Like, wow. And I just launched it Thursday, And so this is nothing more than, you guys know everything I've presented in this course. And just because I've already made one course, there's 2 other courses out there, but other people might be totally interested in hearing, what's your perspective on Go? And so if you're looking to pay for rent, life's expenses, school, you can take what you've already learned and build upon it, or provide a different perspective and put your course up there. And that could help you pay for all the things you need to pay for, going to school and everything like that. So kind of a lot of cool stuff. All right. YouTube. I was going to show you the access code for the course. So let me give you that. So you could have free access. Everybody's got it. One of our primary goals for the semester was to sort of parallel everything we did at the Summer Web Bootcamp, all of Caleb's trainings, 5 days a week, 8 hours a day for 4 weeks, right? Whatever that works out to, like 20 days, 160 hours of training, right? And so we've, as of today, we've totally accomplished that. And we've gotten through all of the material here. And you have access to an index of all the videos, so you could always go back and either look at my videos, which I've recorded, or you could look at how Caleb presents it, so you have two perspectives on the same stuff. But we're through all of the videos, which I think is amazing. After Thanksgiving, we're going to spend 2 days learning about DigitalOcean, and Daniel's going to present to us, because he's been working on this. Daniel's going to present to us how do we set up a Linux box on DigitalOcean and deploy without using App Engine. So we'll see that after Thanksgiving. And then after that, I think we have like 1 class left. And so maybe we could just see your guys' projects that you've been working on. So that'll be what we're doing for the rest of the semester. All right, so that's it. So for today, today, Dr. Lee, we're going to be sort of reviewing some of the stuff that we've done with authentication, and I thought that would be really nice for you because you get to see some of the work that we've done in the class, and then we're going to look at open authentication and how we do open authentication. Hopefully we're going to be able to accomplish all of that in an hour, and we have both Twitter and Dropbox using OAuth built up, and then their assignment for over Thanksgiving is going to be to, one, they have a project where they're building a website either individually or working in a group as a team. And then the other assignment they have is to do open authentication with any of these other websites and fork my repo on GitHub. And then once they've changed it, submit a pull request to me to bring the changed code back into this repo, which we're using for the whole class. So kind of a fun assignment. And you have access to the code base here, and I could show you everything later too offline if you want to see that. All right, so the first way to sort of do authentication was we had with App Engine. And so here's and this is all review, so we'll go through it pretty quickly. But here's basic authentication with App Engine. And so we have two routes, just going to our root and then also going to admin. And so if we go to our root, we go to index. And we get an App Engine new context, and then we get the current user. And then with the current user, right, we could create a logout URL. And so that's an App Engine thing, which handles the entire session and everything like that and logs us out. And so that gives us this URL. So when we want them to log out, right, we pass in, here, this is where you go to sign out, right? And it gives them the sign out right there, right? So it puts that URL right into here. And then with the user stuff, once we have the user, we write the content type, text HTML, and then we could get their email, and we could tell whether or not they're admin. And if they are admin, we could allow them go to admin, right? And then they could also sign out. And if they go to admin, it just says, hey, you're an admin, and it shows their email and also gives them the option to sign out. So let's just take a look at that running. Whoa, I entered full screen. Hold on, I got into full screen accidentally. There we go. And we are in O1, and go run main. Go app serve. Thank you. Cool. Localhost 8080. So we could log in, and we're not going to sign in as administrator the first time, so log in, and we won't see the part, we see you are admin false, but we don't see the link to go to admin. If we manually try to go to admin, right, current logged in user is not authorized to view this page. And so we could sign out, and then we could sign in as administrator, log in, and now we are admin, so if we go to that page, we can see it, and then we sign out. So I think this is a really nice review because it kind of draws together, looking at these different pieces. Oh yeah, there's like 4 or 5 different ways we could do this stuff, and seeing it all at once when I was putting this together was nice for me to do it.
And that one was with the app.yaml having the login required.
App.yaml login required. Thank you. That's an important piece right there. So that's what locks down. That's what locks down anything, making the login required. All right. So then here we started doing stuff with cookies, so manual authentication and sessions. And so just a little review on writing cookies, and we have, root goes to foo, and then listen to serve 8080, and we're using the default serve mux. And so we request the cookie, and the cookie name is logged in. And so let's go look at our browser, and I'm just going to go to localhost 8080. And that's the same one because I'm still running. Control-C. Refresh. Localhost 8080, nothing. And then I'm going to bring up and look at our cookies here. And we have cookies.
Start up the server.
I know, yeah. I just want to show that there's no cookies here. Thank you. Many minds are better than one. Yeah, absolutely. And so we don't have any cookies showing yet. And so here, if there's no cookie, we're going to create a cookie, and the cookie name will be logged in, and we're just giving it the value 0. And then if they're posting, and we'll see the post here in a second, then we're going to check, hey, is the password they entered, is it equal to secret? So we get the password right here from the form value. And if that is equal to secret, then the cookie logged in, we'll set the value to 1. And then if we go to the request URL path log out, If that's the case, right, we'll run this logic here, in which case we'll take the cookie and the value will be 0, which is not logged in, and the max age is -1, which destroys the cookie. And so those are our like basic 3 cookie possibilities, right? There's no cookie, so we'll create the cookie. They're logging in, and so we'll make the cookie logged in. They're logging out, so we'll destroy the cookie. So once we set whichever one we're setting, we do set cookie. And now we're going to create our HTML. We're just going to put that into a string variable and then serve back that variable right here. But we have 2 different cases where we'll create HTML. And the first case here is if they're not logged in. So the cookie value is going to be this. It's either going to be 0 or 1, right? And that's a string. And so if it's 0, they're not logged in. So we're taking 0 and we're using string convert and we're doing int to ASCII. Right, so we're making that a string also. We're comparing a string to string then. So if they're not logged in, 0 equals 0 as a string, and then we come down here and we give them a chance to log in. So there's a form right there, and then after that, right, they could log in. And when this submits, it just goes to the root, which brings them back to here, which runs all of foo again, and that's all of foo. So it checks everything again. And since we just submitted, the request method is post, so we'll run this if the password equals secret. And then down below, we have a cookie value. If they are logged in, we give them the option to log out. So let's take a look at that. And then we just write our response, that HTML, whichever HTML it is. I really like that example. O2, O1, go run main. So now, give me a chance to log in, any username, and just the password secret. Obviously, if this was real world, we'd be checking that against some data storage. And I log in, and I could look down here. I now have a cookie, right? So there's my logged in. I did have a cookie before. We'll get rid of that in a second. Now I'm going to just clear that, clear all, so we can see that in action. Delete. All right, log in once more, and password, submit. And there we're logged in and logged out, and the cookie's gone away. So, kind of cool. And then we did it with Gorilla. And so with Gorilla, here's the most simple version of Gorilla. And so we have our routing, and at root we just go to foo. And you have to put in the context clear handler to prevent that memory leak from the Gorilla documentation. And then basically down here, we do a store get, and we pass in the request, and we're passing in the name of whatever store we're doing, which is session. And so here we have session values, email is equal to request form value email, right? And if that's true, then this is what gets set. And session save, request, response, and all of this stuff right there. All review, so let's just see a run, change directories, and where am I? Cookie, change directories up 1, O2, O1, and go run main. And let me just clear all. There we go, and refresh. And so here it's storing encrypted cookie with all of our values there. So we're using the cookie to store values, and I could store the value email there and get email back out. So that's what that's showing you. Any questions about this? You want to take a second to look at it?
I really like your structure with session. It makes understanding where we're getting information from a lot easier.
Thanks.
So what is the initial value of session when you haven't put anything in it yet?
That was a good question.
Does it look like it already had a number there?
It's a 0 value, but it's got it all encrypted, so even the 0 value's got text.
And we could start to dig into this if we wanted, right? Like here's a pretty critical line, right, where we have sessions, and sessions is coming from github.com Gorilla Sessions, right? And so from that package, we're running this function, and it wants some sort of a secret password, which is a string, but we turn that with conversion into a slice of byte. So if we go and we look at that, right, here's the new cookie store. Key pairs takes unlimited slice of bytes, returns a pointer to a cookie store, right? And so then it runs that code to kind of do everything. And if we go and we look at the documentation on Gorilla, just sort of review that, we are looking at which one for that. We're looking at Gorilla Sessions. And so we could come down here and take a look at Gorilla Sessions. And when we're inside Gorilla Sessions, right, we can read about all of that. But one of the things which is always most instructive to me when looking at any documentation is just looking at, okay, what are my types and what are the methods associated with that type? And so right here we're getting new cookie store, and new cookie store gave us back a pointer to a cookie store. And if we have a pointer to a cookie store, so here's a cookie store, and with a pointer to a cookie store, we have a get, max age, new, and save. And so we could go look, well, what is a cookie store? Because that's kind of what our code, when we asked for a new cookie store, gave us back a cookie store, right? What does a cookie store do? We could see that in a second, but we can see it has these methods. So getting, saving, new is the one I think we were just using. And we can look at the type cookie store, stores session using secure cookie. Oh, sweet, right? And so we come up here and we get sessions, new cookie store, store. So this is going to store sessions with secure cookie. So I just called it store. And then one of the methods we had was get. And so, right, here's the get method, which is attached to the cookie store. So we come to the get method, and get returns a session for the given name after adding it to the registry. It returns a new session if the session doesn't exist. Access is new on the session to check if it is an existing session or a new one. It returns a new session and an error if the session exists but cannot be decoded. Right, so get returns a session. So here we say, all right, get and give us the session. And so if we look at get, what does it take? It takes the request and also whatever name, right? Whatever name we're giving to the session. It gives us back a pointer to a session. Okay, well, it's a pointer to a session. So we can come up here and we can say, okay, here's a session. And now we have type session. We can look at that in a second, how that's defined. But with a pointer to a session, we have all these different methods, right? So we have a cookie store, right? And then we were able to start putting, so we could store things in a cookie. And then with the session, we could start saving, storing, naming, have all these methods here. So type session stores the values and optional configuration for a session, right? So just wrapping your head around that, we have cookie store, which stores sessions using secure cookies. So we get a cookie store, and then once we have a cookie store, right, we're able to store session stores the values and optional configurations. So this is that's kind of how it's all set up, and we get the session, right? So we get back our session there, and then with that we have those different methods attached to the session. Those different methods are these right here. Save, store, name, flashes, and so with session, let me just highlight those. There we go. One of them is values, session values. Well, what's going on here? How come we don't see values there? Right, we're doing session.values. That's kind of interesting. Yeah, so if we look at that, right, here we go. It's one of the member variables of the struct, right? And so it's a map with the key and the value of any type. And so here we have the session.values, and the key is email, right? So we're saying, hey, if the request form value email is not equal to empty string, meaning somebody submitted this form, and this one right here, email, is not equal to empty, then we're going to say, all right, session values email. So we're creating that key. And what we're storing there is the email. So we're storing the value. And then we save the session. And so saving the session is one of the methods right there. And so that saves sort of everything. And then we just write this back out. And if we have something at session values email, then we're able to display that. Otherwise, it just displays empty string because nothing's stored there. that's the way a map works. If you look up something in a map and that key doesn't find anything, it just returns the zero value of the value. So to return an empty string. Or maybe nil, because it was
strings are empty string.
yeah, but the value type on the session was
Any type,
was that, yeah. So would that return?
which includes strings.
Yeah, all right. So yeah, kind of cool. How many people show hands that little bit? Just, oh yeah, that's a good reminder. That was helpful to you. Just show hands, cool. Yeah, helpful for me going through it. And then we have two pieces here, Dr. Lee, which are like I think some of the highlights of the course. And this is one of them. This was a really cool thing that we created. And if you have any questions, Dr. Lee, just ask. So let me just clear what we had out before and refresh. And so we did a little photo blog where it's storing all of our session stuff down here in an encrypted cookie, and you could choose files and upload new files. Let's keep uploading. And that's all, writing it right here to the server. So we're putting those files in right there. Okay. And then, so the code on that is a little bit more significant than the previous example, which is just storing something in a cookie, but a lot of the same stuff is happening there. So we get the new cookie store, and we get our store, and we can kind of see where are we, using that store. And so here we get, the store sessions, and then we get session there, and just, I've already closed it, Gorilla. Sessions. So the new cookie gives us back the pointer to cookie store, and then new, right? That gives us back the pointer to the cookie store, and then we have get, right, which gets that thing, and then get. Let's see, get. Get gives us back a pointer to a session, so we get back our pointer to a session right there. So there's our pointer to a session. So those are all the places that we're using the pointer to the session. And so then here we have session.values logged in, if that's equal to false, or session.values logged in is equal to nil, then we're going to redirect to login. So that's where we're sort of authenticating and making sure that, hey, they are logged in or aren't logged in. And then there's a lot of interesting stuff, I think maybe a little bit too detailed to get into. But I'll let you just look at this code for a second and see if you have any questions, because there's some really interesting pieces on there, just for review. And if you feel like calling out any of the pieces, which, oh, that's cool to see again. Like for me, 28 and 29 are both really good lines, like to, oh yeah, that's right. Those are good lines to remember. And what do you think when you look at line 41?
That's what I was just looking at right there.
So what do you think about that?
What are we holding beside? I see the error and I see header
Yeah.
and source or something, but the data is.
Yeah, so great. So where's request coming from?
From the client.
Yeah, so that's coming back to the server, right? The client sent us something. And then we have form file here. And so where's form file coming from? We could click it, and it brings us into request.go from, right, the standard library. And so we scroll to the top of that. I don't know, I'm all the way at the bottom. Right, package HTTP. All right, so net HTTP, if we wanted to go look at the documentation on it. And so we could go see that, request form file, godoc.org, net HTTP, and form file. And so here's type request and then form file. And so if we go look at that, request, form value, form file. So a method attached to a request, right? And it takes a key and gives us back multi-part file header and error. Form file returns the first file for the provided form key. Form file calls parse multi-part form and parse form if necessary. So we're getting back a file header, and an error, which we could check. It's kind of a unique function because usually you don't see 3 returns. Kind of interesting. And look, if you have anything to say about this, Daniel, jump in. So Dr. Lee could see the full experience. All semester long, Daniel was so awesome at boot camp, I hired him, paid him out of my own pocket just to be a teaching assistant in the class to provide a second perspective on a lot of this stuff. I don't know if that's official. Maybe we keep that quiet.
Yeah, we can reimburse.
I'm not worried about that. I'm not worried about that.
If you need student system set up some.
Yeah.
Yeah, we can talk about that later.
Yeah, that's not the thing. I was just sharing what he's doing up here with you, so you can kind of get the experience of the whole class, and understand what's happening. So anyhow, we get back our source, our header, our error, and where is this coming from? Why did we give that?
Probably in our HTML, that's what we labeled the form that we're submitting.
Yeah, and the other thing you think, so let me bring up that. The other thing I think immediately is I got to do that ink type thing, right, with multi-part form data. When I'm uploading a file, I have to have this. And then the name of the field for the input type file, the name of the field is data. So we're giving it that name data. So we're saying, hey, from the form, there's something coming in that's stored in the variable data. I want to get that, and it's a form file. So those are a couple of really good pieces. So we get the source, we get the header, right? And if we look at that, here we have another function, upload photo, that takes the source, the header, and then also the session. And that's a user-created function here. And source, header, and session. And then these 3 or 4 functions all work together. Can you see that? Is that? Oh yeah, it's plenty big enough, right? And there's a lot of beauty in that code right there, which was a combination of originally Caleb showing all of us at summer boot camp, the pathway, the code pathway. One of the things which has been challenging about this course, Dr. Lee, is teaching it without a textbook. And finding the right pathway of the material to present and having the examples and so the summer boot camp, Caleb was really instrumental in helping us learn the language and the correct way to teach it. And there's some good news I want to share with everybody, incidentally, why I'm mentioning Caleb. So Caleb Doxey is the author of, he was the trainer at our summer web boot camp, and he's the author of Introduction to Programming in Go. And then also, I just tweeted this the other day, so I'm coming here to find it because I can't remember the URL off the top of my head.
Probably search for it.
Yeah? Doxey is what I'm looking for. There we go. So another awesome Golang book on the horizon, this one by Caleb Doxey. So Caleb's got a new book coming out in the spring, and this was our trainer at the summer boot camp, and introducing Go, and then you could see some of what he's going to be talking about. So a lot of just the introduction to the language concepts, but a good resource to know about because his material and his code is really nice. You could get an early release for it right now and start reading it if you want. All right, so back to the code.
So what is this SHA, the function to get SHA, second one?
So so right here, where do we call the get SHA?
74.
Let me just highlight that right there. And so we in Go you defer the close, and so defer is something you could use inside of a function. So if you have a file that needs to be closed or a resource that needs to be closed, you say defer. And one of the intents of Go is to be a really readable language. And so that way, if you open a resource, right next to where you open it, you could close it with defer. And so when you're looking at your code, it's like logically, okay, I opened it and I closed it, but the closing doesn't actually occur until the function that it's in, which would be this one right here. When that function exits, the last thing it does before it exits is run all of the deferred statements. And that way, if you have a function where there's multiple points where open resource could be closed depending upon the path of execution within the function, the function will, the open resource will close regardless of how the function executes, which path it takes. So it's really kind of a nice thing. And so what we're doing here is we're getting the SHA. And so SHA-1 is just a hash algorithm, obviously, right? And we're changing the file name. We're just like running the file through the SHA-1 to get the SHA value back. And we're changing the file name to that SHA value. And that's a practice that Dropbox uses. And so in terms of like large scale, if you had a lot of users uploading files to the system, some users will upload the same file, right? So you might have 20 people who upload the same picture and they want to store that. Well, we don't want to have to store that picture 20 times for all 20 users. We'll store it once, and we could tell we're storing the same one because we ran it through the SHA algorithm and just got our hash. And it's like, okay, that's the file we're storing. And then when the last user no longer needs it, then we could delete it. But all those other users just could point to that one file we've stored, and it looks like it's only their file, right? But we've only stored it once. And so we just did that to sort of, one, illustrate that point, and then two, make sure that we had a unique file name. So we're creating the file name here. And so here we're just running the SHA algorithm to get the hash back. And so that's what get SHA does. It returns a string right there. And go ahead, you got something you want to say about that?
So it helps the security too, because while a file name can't normally be called // something, when it's uploading through the network, they can edit the package as needed to call it with the // They can go all the way up to like your Windows folder or something, or your boot folder in Linux, and overwrite some critical system file that way if needed, or if they wanted to. And this get SHA, we're not actually using their file name for their file anymore. We're calling it based on what the contents of the file is in a folder that we made, and we guarantee that SHA-1's not going to have a // anywhere in it.
Yeah, that's cool. That's what I love about having Daniel up here, providing additional perspectives. All right, but once we did that, and this was one of the things that sort of tripped me up when I was working on this on my own, a roadblock I came into was right here when I do copy, it's read my file to the end of the file. And so right here, I had to say, go back to the beginning of the file, because we're going to read it again and copy it once more. And so we just get the current working directory, and then we do file path join to get the path to where we're storing that. And then we create that path, right, as our destination. And then we're going to defer the close of that also, reset the read head, copy it to our destination, and then we run this add photo, which does this function down here, and then add photos calls get photos, right? So that's basically just creating a data structure where we're keeping a list of all the photos that are available, which we could pass around. Any questions on these lower two ones, or anything look interesting to you? All right, here's the session values data, right? So that's where we're storing the data of those pictures.
So why do you store it as JSON instead of just like structure?
Yeah, that's a good question. I was just wondering that myself this morning when I was looking that over, and that might be something that you could take out. I don't necessarily have a good reason off the top of my head, other than you could just store it potentially as a string, right? But JSON is a good string to store. When you have a data structure, you want to store it as a string. JSON does that well. Let me look at this for a second, see if I have a better answer. Or maybe Daniel, you see something to answer that.
Not off the top of my head, since the session values can be is type interface empty, so anything can go in there.
Yeah.
So you should be able to stick the struct directly.
Be fun to play with. Maybe fix it up. So that's basically the photo blog. All right, I got to get going on these files. We're going to stop going quite so in depth. I want to show. Then we did memcache. I want to show you bcrypt, and then we're going to look at OAuth. And so memcache was the Twitter example, and obviously there's a whole lot to that one. But let's just see it run so Dr. Lee can see it, and then we'll see bcrypt, and then I'm going to do OAuth. All right, Control C and O3. Where am I? Photoblog.
Go up another one.
There we go. And go answer. So we recreated Twitter, and I called it 7 Deadly Sins, One Convenient Location as the motto, because you have everything you could want there in terms of a deadly sin. You have envy, greed, sloth, lust, 7 deadly sins, one convenient location. Then we have our login. So if you're already a user, you can log in, or you could go to create an account and enter an email. And so we'll do Ming at, let's keep it anonymous. I don't know. What? We'll do gorilla at example.com. That's not good. Gorilla came to mind for me because 2 hard things in computer science. What are they?
Variable naming? Is that it?
And clearing cache. Enter Twitter name. Nanny's going to be the Twitter name, and 123, 123. There we go. So there's Nanny, and we're at the home page. There's no tweets there, so we're going to tweet. And this is your nanny. Have you cleaned your room? There you go. There's the tweet, and we got that humanizing time and everything like that. And then we can log out, and we can create a new user. And this one will be, I don't know, I like the cowboy at example.com and cowboy and 123. Oh, and this is good to show. Check this out. We did a little Ajax here, Ming. And so when you're searching for a username, it's continually checking with the server, does that name exist? And so as soon as I hit, a name that's been taken, it returns true on the query and says, oh, that one's been taken. So that's kind of a fun thing. And it also does all the testing for, like if I was just to, not have an email there and submit, right? It's like, oh, well, that's pretty obvious stuff, but so
is this also Ajax or?
yeah, we did Ajax. So you can see that Ajax call happening right here on the console, right? So as I type things in, let me just clear all that out. As I type things in, you can see the requests going over and the results coming back.
I mean, for the email validation, it's not Ajax.
Oh, I'm not sure if we did that on email validation. I think that might just be straight HTML. We could look at that.
I think that's the HTML5. Make sure it
Yeah.
is an email. I don't think it verifies duplicates with the server.
So create an account and then tweet. I'm a cowboy. I don't clean rooms. And then there's all that other stuff that you could do where you could go and follow people. So if we went to Nanny, we see only, is it Nanny? Oh, users. User, and then, all right, we'll go to Cowboy. Right now we see only Cowboy's tweets. And I'm logged in as Cowboy, so if we go to Nanny, we can follow Nanny. I forgot to hit enter. Follow. So now Cowboy's following Nanny. Anyhow, Twitter.
So now if you go back to Cowboy, you'll see her nanny tweets now, or
I don't know how we built that in.
that may not have happened yet?
I think that was left up as an exercise
Okay.
to go see all the people I'm following. Yeah. So let's look to see what the Ajax is looking like on that. Following me, log in, sign up. So field of code. So here's where where's the script start? Right here. Here's the script and getting what objects from the DOM, and then we have the Ajax for the username must be unique, and we're just doing plain old VanillaJS. I don't know if you've seen this, Dr. Lee, but VanillaJS. so there's this interesting website, VanillaJS, is put together as a joke because there's so many JavaScript frameworks, right? And so they said, here's my new JavaScript framework, VanillaJS. And then they said, look at the performance on VanillaJS, just plain old JavaScript, right? And, it's like it could do 12 million operations a second, whereas jQuery only does 350,000, or, 8 million, whereas jQuery is only 19,000. And so I think that's pretty cool. And I don't know, I'm kind of like, I like just straight up, like, let me just use JavaScript, So that's the Ajax there. And validating passwords. We do have a password check, right, to make sure that you've typed your password in correct 2 times. So we do have that, but we're not using the we aren't validating the email address. So
yeah, you're probably just using the HTML5.
Yeah, that's just going to be the
tag.
HTML5 tag right here. Type email. And autofocus. And here, that was a nice little interesting thing right there, because this is for the username. And if you have autocomplete on with the username, then you get a drop-down list of possibilities of things you've typed in before, but then that covers up the response of, is that name taken or not taken? That would be behind your autocomplete drop-down. So that was a little piece to add in. A lot of nuances. All right, so that was Twitter. And then here's bcrypt. I was concerned I might not have enough material for today. Now I'm concerned we're going to run out of time. Many people have, for their password, my wife's name and birthday or something similar. So I figured I'd just make that the password in this example. And let's just see it work, and then the code will make a little bit more sense. So Control C. And so you don't want to store people's passwords on your server. You want to encrypt them. And we're in O2, O4, and it's just go run main. And so here's what that does. That's not quite what I was thinking it was going to produce. I thought it had before encryption. Let me just clear that out so we're not looking at all that other stuff. All right, so let's see what it looks like. So there's a package, in crypto called bcrypt, and we could generate from password, right? So I'm passing in and generate from password, right? Generate from password takes a slice of bytes, the password, and then the cost, and then right here, so I pass in just a minimum cost there is just like a constant, and I think it's 4, and so then that does the turns it into a byte slice, which I print right here, right? And once I have the byte slice, I could turn that into a string, and then I turn it into hexadecimal. And then when you compare passwords, right? So here's compare passwords. What's that take? Compare passwords takes the hash password and the password. And so here's the hash password, that byte slice, right? And then here is the slice of byte p. And doesn't match or does match. I'm going to put in a new line right there because then we'll see it a little bit more clearly. So let me run that again. And you can see that we have a match because I passed in my original password, which is my wife's name and birthday, and I passed in the encrypted password, and it compared those, and they matched. If instead I passed in, I don't know, my dog's name, I actually think those are funny passwords. Instead of actually entering your dog's name, you just enter my dog's name. Like you can see, this is what I encrypted, my wife's name and birthday, and this is what I entered, my dog's name, and so they don't match. And so that's, you can pull out the encrypted password, take what the person gave you, use compare hash and password, and see, hey, it matches. Okay, you're in. And you don't have to worry about all the other details of encrypting, unencrypting, right? You just run that function, compare. What's up?
What did cost and min cost do?
So that's going to be the number of times that it calculates a certain hash algorithm, and so it'll get the result, and then just run it again on the result, and then just run it again on the result, and so it just makes it more complex for people to break it.
Yeah,
Did I say that correctly?
it makes it
Just-
take longer.
Yeah, discourages brute force attacks.
Yeah, it makes it take
And
longer.
also, as technology gets better, things will naturally speed up, so you can increase the cost to offset that.
You're awesome. Generate from password returns the bcrypt hash of the password at the given cost. If the cost given is less than min cost, the cost will be set to default cost. So it doesn't say anything about explaining it, but I think I might have here in README. I just have a link to the docs. I thought there might be a link. Sometimes I put in the timestamp to where Caleb talks about it, and that's kind of cool. So let's look at OAuth. And there's a couple of steps in here. And, I've detailed all the steps right there. And so the first one is just to learn about OAuth. And OAuth is open authentication. And so you guys have all seen this before, but maybe you don't know the name. Anybody have any questions, by the way, before we move on? I feel like we were done with bcrypt. Everybody's good? So I know you've all probably seen it before, and I always seem to struggle, give me an example of OAuth. And so here's one, the forum Golang bridge. So I'm just going to launch Safari and a different browser and go there. And then I want to sign up. And so I can sign up with Google or with Twitter or with GitHub. Or I could just create a username and a password and give them my GitHub username so they can recognize my code, right? But so there's 4 different ways I could sort of do my authentication sign up here at this website. So OAuth is an interesting deal to me because maybe I'm old school, but when I say, okay, I'm going to sign up with GitHub, it launches this thing here and then asks me to sign into GitHub. I guess I've already done that here. And I'm already signed in. It didn't ask me for any permissions. But often it'll ask you for permissions. And those permissions to me are sometimes what? Does anybody else have that? You want to have access to all my contacts, all of their emails, all of my emails, all of my calendar. It's you could do some serious damage in my life with all that information if you don't handle it correctly. I don't want you having all my contacts' emails. What are you going to do to them?
I read it as a cover our butt thing. Is kind of how I read those.
I know.
Just in case, but.
So so that's kind of my perspective on OAuth is I don't want to give some other website my GitHub stuff.
Well, there are flags with it that you can say I only want access to these specific things, so you can limit how much it is so that it doesn't worry people.
How do you guys feel about it? How many people are no problem? I don't care. Yeah.
That means you don't have to remember another username access combo.
Just easy.
Sure, you can read my email.
Yeah, so that's I was kind of surprised, but that was also Caleb's perspective. He's I use it all day long. Because same reason, he's I can't remember passwords. So there's a package here, and there's the path to it, and so it's for doing Oauth2, and it's got all that stuff there. And more importantly, down at the bottom, it has a bunch of directories: Facebook, GitHub, Google. There's VK, right? So different stuff you could do Oauth2 with. And but we just did it manually, so we could see that process. And so the process is first we learn about GitHub OAuth, and you can go here and read how do you do OAuth at GitHub. And then here's an example. We just saw that. This is what we're going to try to build. So that's what we're going to try to build. And then GitHub has docs on OAuth, so you'll spend some time here getting some information. So let's just go look at that for a second, because that'll help, congeal. Congeal? I don't know if that's the right word. So here it talks about the web application flow, and you're going to go here and ask them for information and send them information. But the first thing you need to do is register your application. So you go register your application. And when you register your application, it just asks you to enter some information, right? And so I've already set one up here, and there it is right there. And it gives you a client ID and a client secret. And just in case you're watching this video online, yes, I will be deleting this after the class because that's secret. And I'm not quite sure what kind of damage you could do if you had that, but I don't want to find out. And then you just enter, basically this. Give it a name. It could be anything you want. Give it the homepage URL, right? So this would be my AppSpot deal. Give it a description, and then you have to have a callback URL. So let's see how all that works. And I put together a cool little example right here, right? So basically, you can see there's this URL right there: GitHub login OAuth authorize, right? GitHub login OAuth authorize. And that's the same deal as right here. GitHub, login, OAuth, authorize. Now, what does Git mean? Like, how would you, Git versus post? What do you think? Describe the difference.
Git has all its parameters in the URL,
Yeah.
whereas Post has it
Yeah.
in the form.
Yeah, so that's like, if we're doing Git, we need to add parameters to the end of the URL. And here are the parameters, right? So one's like client ID. Well, heck, I just had a client ID, right? That client ID is right here. And then it also wants, redirect URL. And so that redirect URL has to match this, right? So that's the, where do I go back after you've done it? That's the redirect URL. And then I could also set scope on that. What kind of access am I asking for? And then state is going to be an unguessable random string that every time is just going to be different. So I could add that, send it to somebody, and then when they send it back, I could check, did they have the right one? And then after that has been done once, it's going to be different the next time, right? So nobody could, start making up their own requests and sending them to me because they won't have a number which I have, which can then match. And so that's that is an attack called a cross-site request forgery. And so back in the early days of the web, and maybe still there's potential to do this, if somebody was already logged into Bank of America, and if Bank of America expected certain parameters to do an account transfer, right? Somebody else could have you fill out a form to get free T-shirts about puppies and kittens, and when you fill out that form, it'd get the information that it needed, and it would submit that form to Bank of America also then, and to their URL, and they'd put together all the little pieces it needed, right, that they needed, and if you were logged in on your computer, it would then complete a transaction, right, transfer money from their account to your account. Or whatever. So that's kind of an interesting deal. But having that unique number, then if with every request that comes in, I'm going to check that with a unique number and see if do they have that? Then that defeats the cross-site forgery. So here I just manually built the URL and I gave it my client ID. And this is local development, and then I gave it the redirect URL, and then I gave it. Let's see, and then I also just gave it a random number for state. It's not so important in this example, right? But I could put it in. And then if I come here, and I just need to make sure that I have as my redirect localhost 8080 OAuth2 callback, and that needs to match right here, localhost 8080 OAuth2 callback. So now, I don't know if I just copied that. Now if I take this and put it here, right, with just nothing running, I'm just doing a GET request, but I'm giving it my client ID and the redirect URL. So that should be fine, because that's basically what I want to build up and Go to do. And when I run that, nothing happened. What happened?
No, the
No.
GitHub part worked. It redirected you.
Oh, it redirected me.
But your code's not running.
That's because I probably, let's try it over here.
Yeah, you've already authorized.
I've already
GitHub.
authorized GitHub. There we go. Safari cannot connect to the
You're authorized
server.
on there too. Just open up a private
Well, it's because your code's not
incognito
running.
mode.
Thank you. Good suggestion. New incognito window. There we go. Bottom. So it asked me to sign in. So I don't know what my sign in is. Crap. I had this example work at home, and where would it be keeping track of that? In cookies?
It'd be the GitHub cookies, I believe.
GitHub. Let's go to GitHub, but then I'm going to have to log in
You
again.
have to log in with GitHub again. Yeah.
All right.
I'll save recording.
Here, GitHub goes to 11. Yeah, and I can't show my passwords. I could pause the recording though. All right, let's see if it works now. I think I'm already authorized.
Yeah.
So what can I change to unauthorize myself? Maybe if I have a different example, what's in that URL that would get changed? Let's see here. So
What would be the cookie that's storing your token?
client ID.
So you could just figure out all your GitHub cookies.
Yeah, maybe localhost. So let's go here and see if there's a cookie here. And nothing. And we'll go to GitHub and clear out all the GitHub cookies. Clear all. There we go. And then refresh GitHub and sign in and sign in. Still,
I think it's on the GitHub side. I think GitHub server says
Yeah, with
this
my
application
username,
is authorized to
everything.
use.
oh, that's a good idea. GitHub.com, GitHub OAuth. Let's see here. If we can find my people that I've authorizations. That's what I wanted. Authorizations and revoke all authorizations. That's all in the.
Yeah, I think it's in your GitHub settings. You can set it. Your main GitHub settings.
GitHub. I'm going to be showing even more information here.
Applications.
Applications. Cool. And there we go. Revoke that. Cool. Understand. I just revoked that. So now. Holy cow. Awesome. That's what I was trying to get to. So we just built up the URL manually. And now it's saying, hey, this wants access. Right?
Hey, you want access to you.
I want access to me.
So yeah, the pictures in the upper right, the ones who you've logged in as, and the ones whoever owns the GitHub application.
The more interesting one would be like, if you could do this with your partner. I want more access with my partner. My wife probably wants more access to me too. All right. So how do we do that? We can start looking at some of the code for that. So we have just basic session, which we've already seen. We were looking at that. But here we have a couple of constants. So the redirect URI, the GitHub API URL, and then root goes to handle index. And so that's kind of like just we have a link to log in with. And then we go to GitHub login to log in. And that goes to GitHub handle login, this function. And so we just get app engine context and then session. We're going to get a session here. And that session is just right from our we rolled our own session stuff here, cookie thing we've already seen. We get a new UUID, and then we're going to do make URL values. And so we could create values that we're adding. And that might be new. I don't know if we've seen that in here, but basically these are the things I'm going to pin to my URL. And so making URL values, let me look at that here. That's in package URL. So if we go to godoc.org, net URL. And what are we doing? How are we doing it? Make URL values. URL
Values down at the bottom.
values. There we go. And so it's a map. So we make maps and a string and a slice of string. And so there's an example here. And URL values, right? Kind of approaching it a different way. And then just set versus add. And it's kind of interesting, the difference between set and add. Adds the value to the key. It appends to any existing values associated with the key. And add versus set. Set sets the key to the value. It replaces any existing key. So set replaces, add adds, and appends. Kind of cool. So here, just adding values and giving it a key. And it takes the, where did it go? Add takes the key and then the value. So the key and then the value. So that's my client ID and then the redirect URI and then the scopes, strings, join, GitHub scopes. And GitHub scopes are right here. So I want user email and read org is another scope.
Organizations.
Yeah, read the organizations. And then state is just taking my unique ID from the UUID and turning it into a string. And so session.state is equal to ID string. So now I'm saving to my session that number, and then I can check that. Which down here, right, when I get the callback, what comes back, right? If what the number I have doesn't match the number that was given to me in the form, then I know that this was not a valid sort of thing I created. And then I put my session. And then redirect. So that's basically it, just creating that URL. And we ran out of time, but we could talk about this more after Thanksgiving. And but you have everything you need to work it. And so again, just over Thanksgiving, try to put this together for Twitter through VK. And you've got both Dropbox and GitHub as examples, plus you have really good notes about how it works and all those. And one of the things which I'll mention, though, before we go, and then this will be it, is that first thing we do, we get back an authorization code, like where we passed through Git certain things to GitHub. They send us back an authorization code. And that's the user saying, okay, I authorize the application to access my stuff. And we get back that authorization code, and then we need to ask for an access token at GitHub. And we ask for an access token, this is going to require our client secret. So when we ask for the authorization code, we passed over our ID. Like me, this website, I'm asking for my user if my user can have authorization. So I pass over that, right? And that gave us the authorization code. When we ask for the access token, we're passing over this, right? And so that's going to happen on HTTPS, and that's also going to happen via a form post. And that way, it's that information is secret. So there are those two steps there, right? And so that's authorization from the user. I should change that to from. And this is authorization of the application.
So the client ID goes to the user in the HTML. The client ID is like your public key. Anyone can have. They use that to go to GitHub, sign in with GitHub. GitHub will send them back. Will redirect them to your URL with a GET post with the authorization code in the question in the query parameters. Then you can use that along with your secret key, which is your server should be the only thing that knows your secret key. That way, GitHub knows that, hey, you got this authorization token from the user. This shows the user's been logged in, which they know because it's on their server. And you got your secret key saying that, yes, this is the people who requested that they sign in. And with that, they can give you the access token, which is what you will use to actually access information from GitHub.
Yeah. Very well said. So have fun with that. Caleb, this is he gives a really nice talk about all that right at that point. So if you want to watch how he presents it, that'll take you right to the point in the video where he starts talking about that stuff right there. And then there's also a really interesting discussion somewhere right around there about hacking. And one hack which was discussed is creating a website that, and I just mentioned this because I thought it's interesting, create a website that offers really good value to people, like even products right at cost or below cost, and you capture a bunch of users because they come to you because, hey, this is great value, and you get their username and passwords, and a lot of people don't change, they use the same username and password everywhere. Once you have those username and passwords, you just start trying them at banks. Wow, that's an interesting hack.
So don't go buy products, don't go buy an Xbox for $150.
I don't know. But I saw that's interesting. So I think it'd be cool at some point to see, if there's some web hacking class, maybe in the future. I think that'd be a fun class. All right, y'all, have a good Thanksgiving. Good to see you. Thanks for coming. Thanks for I don't know. It was a good review. I liked seeing all that material again. If anybody has any questions or anything, I'm here and I'll be hanging out afterwards. So let me know if you have questions. Bye. Happy Thanksgiving.
Happy Thanksgiving.
Have a good Thanksgiving.